I still remember the day I first saw the letter. A crisp, ivory envelope bearing my name in an elegant script. I was sitting at the mahogany desk that had been my grandmother's, thumbing through a stack of old photographs when it arrived. The edges of the envelope were slightly frayed, as though it had traveled a long way to reach me. My heart hammered in my chest as I broke the seal. Inside, a single sheet of heavy paper bore the crest of Hawthorne and Blake, the most prestigious law firm in the city. My breath caught at the sight of it. My grandmother, Genevieve Langdon, had passed away only 2 weeks earlier, leaving behind a legacy of whispered rumors and unanswered questions. Now, it seemed, clarity was finally coming. Dear Ms. Rosalind Brandt, the letter began, I write to inform you that you have been named sole beneficiary of the Langdon estate, pending verification of your acceptance and completion of the attached documents. You have 30 days to respond, after which the estate will be distributed as described in the enclosed will. I blinked, my pulse racing. My grandmother and I had been close, closer than either of us realized. When I was a child, she'd poured me warm honey and lemon tea while I confessed my first broken heart. As a teenager, she'd slipped a $20 bill into my palm before parent-teacher conferences, just to calm my nerves. Even in my 20s, as I navigated cutthroat corporate ladders and boardroom battles, her unwavering faith in me had been a soft place to land. I looked around my modest apartment, furnished with the bare essentials. An anniversary gift from my ex-fiancé, left when he found someone more supportive, still sat untouched on the coffee table. A secondhand laptop hummed quietly on the couch. In my small kitchen, the coffee maker sputtered as though it, too, were caught off guard by the news. Thomas, my sister, no, not my sister, but the one who had always felt entitled to everything I had worked for, had already made her move. As I held my grandmother's letter, another one pinged into my email inbox. Subject: Immediate response required. Hawthorne and Blake estate documents. My pulse spiked again. I stared at the sender. Thomas Hawthorne, not relation to the firm thankfully, had been my sister's new fiancé for just 6 months. Already, society pages whispered about a merger of fortunes. I clicked through the email. In flashy, ominous red text, it stated that, quote, due to an oversight, the will as provided to Ms. Rosalind Brandt has been updated to reflect a joint beneficiary arrangement. Ms. Thomas Brandt will receive a 50% share upon completion of the attached digital acknowledgement. Failure to comply will result in a delay of distribution. Delay. Nothing more. That one word felt like a slap. My jaw tightened. Delay meant they were scrambling to rewrite history, to bend the truth into whatever shape suited their greediest desires. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar sting of betrayal rise in my throat. From the moment she showed up at my grandmother's funeral wearing a designer dress she'd stolen on sale, I'd known Thomas was trouble. But I had hoped that maybe, just maybe, family ties and Grandma's soft heart would prevail. I rose from the desk, clutching the envelopes like lifelines. My reflection in the window looked pale, drawn. Then I spotted it. A spot of fresh paint on the sill. Grandfather's old workshop window, the one Grandma always kept shut to keep out cold drafts and curiosity, had been opened, the latch sticking like it hadn't been used in decades. I frowned. Why open it now? But any detective knows that the smallest clue can unravel the biggest mysteries. I left my apartment without locking the door, something I never do. The downtown streets thrummed with midday traffic, awash in the golden haze of late spring. Even in the bustle, my mind raced. Threads of memory tugged at me. Grandma's whispered warnings about those who smile the sweetest, the way she'd always watched Thomas with cautious eyes. My car hummed down Elm Street as I made my way to Hawthorne and Blake. The building's marble steps gleamed under the sun, columns rising like sentinels. To enter was to step into a world of polished floors, hushed tones, and immaculately tailored suits. And in the gilded waiting room, everything smelled of leather and old money. Malcolm Keegan, the partner assigned to the case, greeted me with a sympathetic nod. His hair was flecked with gray, his lined face exuding competence. Ms. Brandt, he said, extending a paper-thin folder. I'm sorry for your loss. but there's something I need to show you first. He slid the folder across the mahogany table. Beneath a swatch of transparent plastic lay the original will. Her grandmother's handwriting curled gracefully across the page. My grandmother had named me sole heir, diverting the estate entirely to me. Then, below, in a heavier hand, someone had scribbled an addendum. I, Genevieve Langdon, hereby amend the above, granting my granddaughter Thomas Brandt 50%. The signature scrawl was unfamiliar. This is a forgery, Malcolm said softly. I've had it examined by experts. The room tilted. My chest tightened so sharply I was sure I'd collapse. Who would do such a thing? He sighed, glancing at the door. We believe it was your sister. My throat closed. Everything inside me roared. Anger, disbelief, grief. This was no mere family feud. This was war. Malcolm slid a photograph across the table. It was taken in the dim light of night, outside Grandma's study. My sister's silhouette flickered under the street lamp. In her hand, a folder identical to the one I'd just held. Security camera footage, he explained. I reached for the photo, my fingers trembling. What now? I whispered. We have to challenge it in court, but the timeline is short. We need proof and witness statements before the hearing on June 21st. June 21st. The date rang in my ears. 2 weeks to gather the pieces of a shattered past, to unmask lies that slithered beneath the surface of family love. As I left the firm, the afternoon sky felt suddenly fragile, like it might shatter at any moment. Around me, life carried on, pedestrians chatting on corners, shopkeepers arranging displays of summer fashions. But I felt suspended, tethered between the world I thought I knew and the one I was about to confront. Behind me, the courthouse dome gleamed in the distance. It would be the arena for my grandmother's final words, for justice to rise or fall. I drove past it slowly, imagining cold marble floors and echoing hallways where truth would be pitted against deceit. And then came the moment I knew I had a single choice: fight. Because Grandma had believed in me, and I would not let her faith or her legacy be stolen. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow I have a special story for you. Morning sunlight filtered through the courthouse portico, spilling in gold across the steps as I tightened the scarf around my neck. My heart pounded like a war drum in my chest. Today was the first hearing to challenge the forged addendum. Pulling open the heavy wooden doors, I felt the weight of generations pressing down. My grandmother's quiet dignity, my sister's betrayal, and the promise of justice waiting to be fulfilled. Inside, the corridors were hushed, marble hush that seemed to absorb even the softest breath. I paused in front of courtroom 4B, the brass placard polished to a mirror sheen. Through the small window in the oak door, I could see the chairs still empty, the judge's bench looming behind the rail. The sign on the wall reminded litigants to silence their phones. Careful to follow instructions, I placed mine on airplane mode, the screen dark and inert. Malcolm Keegan appeared at my side, his black robes sweeping behind him like a banner of authority. He offered me a small, encouraging smile. Rosalind, are you ready? I drew in a steadying breath, straightening my jacket. More ready than I've ever been. He nodded, ushering me forward. Inside, the courtroom felt cavernous, high ceilings echoing every shuffled footstep. At the judge's bench, Judge Marlo Fletcher tapped her gavel once and the room settled into a dense silence. On my left, family seats were empty. On the right, my sister sat, Thomas Brandt, her posture rigid, shoulders squared as though she already owned the victory. My palms were damp, but as I rose to stand beside Malcolm, I felt the clarity of purpose wash over me. This was not just about money or property. It was about truth, integrity, and preserving Grandma's final wishes. The bailiff called the case, Langdon Estate versus Brandt, hearing on motion to strike alleged addendum to will. Judge Fletcher peered down at her notes, eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. Counsel for the estate, you may proceed. Malcolm stepped forward, voice measured. Your Honor, we move to strike the addendum dated May 3rd, citing it as a forgery. We intend to present handwriting analysis, security video evidence, and witness testimony to substantiate this claim. Thomas's attorney, a slick woman named Helena Ross, rose swiftly. Her voice was smooth, almost silk. Your Honor, we contend that the addendum is valid. Our client acted in good faith, relying on the document as presented by Hawthorne and Blake. She glanced back at Thomas, who nodded once, expression impassive. The judge raised a hand. I am willing to hear the evidence on the record. We will begin with the handwritten analysis report. Ms. Keegan, she indicated Malcolm. Malcolm approached the bench and laid a thick report in front of her. Here is the full analysis provided by Langley and Associates. Their conclusion is unequivocal. The handwriting in the addendum diverges in letter formation, pressure, and slant from Genevieve Langdon's authentic signature. I swallowed hard, listening as she summarized the key points: mismatched loops in the letter G, inconsistent spacing between words, and microscopic ink discoloration, signatures of forgery. Helena Ross frowned, but offered no rebuttal beyond questioning the chain of custody. Next came the video footage. Malcolm rose again, calling for the screen to be lowered. Before us flickered black and white surveillance images from the night of May 3rd. There, on the shadowed walkway outside Grandma's study, stood a figure, tall, slender, coat draped over one arm, slipping a folder under the study door's crack. The timestamp glowed at the bottom, 11:47 p.m. The attorneys argued over the quality of the footage, whether the figure was truly my sister. I felt a tremor as the judge leaned forward, peering through her glasses. Counsel, can these images be enhanced? Yes, Your Honor, Malcolm replied. We've had them processed to clarify the silhouette. He pressed a remote, and the screen sharpened. At last, the outline of hair, the slope of the shoulders, matched the build I knew all too well. And the way she moved, deliberate, confident, spoke of someone who meant this moment to be secret but calculated. A gasp echoed in the courtroom. My gasp, though I sat perfectly still. Opposite me, Helena Ross's lip twitched. Thomas shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her facade cracking. The judge refocused her attention. Ms. Brandt, please stand. My sister rose, knees stiff. Judge Fletcher pointed to the screen. Do you deny that this person is you? Thomas's voice was calm but brittle. I was outside my mother's study that night, yes. But I was bringing her medicine. She's old. She asked for herbal tea for insomnia. A murmur rippled through the gallery. I bit my lip, fury coursing through every vein. What a brazen lie. Grandma had never needed medicine brought after midnight, and I remembered the missing vial of lavender tincture from her cabinet, something I'd discovered when searching for clues. Miss Brandt, Judge Fletcher said, I will consider your explanation. Counsel for the estate, call your next witness. Malcolm moved to the side, and I knew what came next. My grandmother's longtime caretaker, Mrs. Alcott, would testify. She'd lived in the house for 30 years, seen every quirk of Grandma's routines. I almost stood up when she entered, her silver hair neatly pinned, her posture straight despite her age. She shuffled to the stand, spectacles perched on her nose. The bailiff swore her in. Malcolm's questions were gentle. Mrs. Alcott, did you observe anyone entering or exiting the study on the night of May 3rd? Her voice trembled slightly. I did, Mr. Keegan. I was in the kitchen when I heard the study door click shut. I thought it odd. It was past her bedtime, but I assumed she was reading. But when morning came, I found the documents spread on her desk, and my keys missing from the ring she kept here. Helena Ross jumped up. But you said you thought it odd she was reading. How can you be sure it was Miss Brandt you saw? Mrs. Alcott shook her head, eyes clear. Because I saw her coat. It was the same one Thomas always wore. And besides, the figure bent and paused, as if to leave the folder. It stood there just like she stands now, indecisive. She pointed her finger toward Thomas, voice firm. I know her walk. My chest tightened. The air felt electric. Judge Fletcher nodded, her pen scratching notes. Counsel for the defense? She prompted. Helena Ross said nothing. Instead, she closed her notebook with a sharp snap. The judge tapped her gavel lightly. I will review the evidence. We will reconvene at 2 p.m. to hear closing statements and ruling. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Malcolm laid a reassuring hand on my shoulder as we filed out. Outside, the courtyard was bright with spring bloom. I tasted the sweetness of cherry blossoms on the breeze. But my victory felt fragile. Thomas would not go down without a fight. She had resources, cunning, and a hunger for power I had only begun to comprehend. I stepped aside, calling Malcolm's attention. What now? He gave me a wry smile. Now we prepare for the hearing this afternoon, and for whatever she throws at us next. The road ahead was long, but I had my grandmother's words echoing in my mind. Truth is the strongest inheritance you can leave, and I would honor her legacy, no matter the cost. The soft click of the front door startled me. I had been lost in thought, replaying the morning's courtroom drama on loop. Every twist of the judge's gaze, every tremor in my sister's voice, etched into my mind like charcoal on canvas. Now, the silence of my apartment felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were waiting. I rose and closed the door behind me, the lock clicking into place with a satisfying finality. Outside, the city's pulse continued unabated, horns blaring at intersections, cyclists calling out as they wove through traffic, street vendors hawking artisanal coffee and bagels. Yet here, in my living room, the world was hushed. My gaze fell upon the unopened envelope on the coffee table, another missive from Hand B. Malcolm's assistant had hand-delivered it this morning, urging me not to open it until we met. I picked it up now, heart-thudding, and slid it open carefully. Inside lay a single page. Ms. Brandt, you are cordially invited to a private meeting with Ms. Helena Ross and Ms. Thomas Brandt on Thursday, June 12th, at 6 p.m., at 221B Langdon Place, the original family residence. In the spirit of resolution, we believe a face-to-face discussion may avoid further litigation costs. Sincerely, Helena Ross, Esquire. A meeting at Langdon Place. The irony was not lost on me. My grandmother's home, the epicenter of her life story, now the stage for my own confrontation. I crumpled the letter, anger flaring. This was a trap, an attempt to disarm me with courtesy, to twist the conversation away from the courtroom's bright lights and into a parlor where favors could be subtly extracted. I sensed movement in the hallway and froze. Heart in my throat, I stepped into the shadowed corridor. There, under the small flicker of a hallway lamp, stood Thomas herself. "Rosalind," she said softly, her voice a silken thread. "I'm sorry you had to go through all of this. I didn't want it to be like this. But I had my reasons, family obligations. You know how Grandma was with tradition." My breath hitched. She sounded contrite, but her eyes shone with a calculated gleam. "Your reasons? You forged her will. How could you justify that?" She took a step closer, raising one hand in a placating gesture. "I only did what I thought would protect our family's legacy. Don't you understand? If the estate went to one person, it could be sold off, divided. I thought splitting it would keep everything intact." I laughed, but it was hollow. "Protect the legacy? You mean profit?" Her expression faltered for just a moment before she recovered. "Look, Rosie, this could end without more drama. We sit down on Thursday, I apologize in front of the lawyer, we withdraw the addendum, I walk away with nothing, and we let this go. You honor Grandma's wishes, and I honor her memory." I stared at her, pulse pounding. It was a gambit. Appear remorseful, lure me in, then twist the conversation. But maybe that was exactly what I needed. If we met face to face, I could watch her, gauge her honesty, gather more details of her plan. I studied her carefully. Every line in her expression, the set of her jaw. She was wearing the same black coat from the footage, clean, crisp, as though she had prepared for this meeting all along. Finally, I spoke. "Thursday at 6, but I'll bring Malcolm, and a court reporter." I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could feel the tremor. "And if any sign of deceit, it's back to the courtroom." Thomas nodded slowly, her face schooled into neutrality. "Agreed. I'll see you then." She turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I watched until she disappeared around the corner, and then slumped against the wall, breathing hard. Thursday felt a lifetime away. I needed to plan, to fortify my defense, while seeking the truth behind her motives. If she truly believed in preserving Grandma's legacy, what had driven her to betray her own blood? And what else might I discover in the shadowed halls of Langdon Place? The days that followed were a blur of research and reconnaissance. With Malcolm's help, I obtained Grandma's personal journals from her bedside table. They contained passages about her hopes for the estate, projects she dreamed of funding in the community, scholarships for underprivileged students, support for the local theater, all of it strictly under my guidance. I spent nights poring over those pages, marking quotes and references, building a picture of her true intentions. Meanwhile, I scouted Langdon Place, mapping entry points, noting where security cameras were installed or absent. The residence had been modernized with cutting-edge systems, but the study still relied on an old analog lock. That's where the forgery had taken place. One evening, as dusk settled, I slipped into the study, legally, with permission from the firm, to take photographs of the lock mechanism, the desk where the documents had lain, the small crack in the hardwood floorboards where the envelope had been slid inside. Every detail mattered. Every nuance could become evidence. And in those quiet moments, amid the dust motes drifting through the lamplit room, I felt Grandma's presence. It was as though she were guiding my hand, urging me onward. "Trust the truth," she'd whispered in my memory. "It will set you free." As Thursday crept closer, I realized that more was at stake than property. Thomas had gambled everything on a single, desperate act. If I could expose her fraud here, in the place where it had all begun, the court would have no choice but to uphold Grandma's final word. And so I steeled myself for the confrontation, armed with truth, guided by faith, and determined to see justice done, no matter the personal cost. The final hour approached, and with it, the chance to reclaim not only my inheritance, but the very essence of my grandmother's legacy. The grand hallways of Langdon Place were hushed, the afternoon sun filtering through stained glass windows and casting fractured rainbows across the marble floors. I stepped inside at precisely 5:45 p.m., arriving 15 minutes early as planned. My nerves tingled with anticipation, but I channeled that energy into focus. Clutching my grandmother's journal, I surveyed the space. It was both familiar and foreign, a place of childhood memories now tainted by betrayal. Malcolm arrived moments later, briefcase in hand. His presence grounded me. We exchanged a nod, and together we ascended the sweeping staircase to the study on the second floor. The door to the study was ajar. Inside, Helena Ross was already there, flanked by Thomas. The lawyer's expression was all polite professionalism, but I sensed the calculation behind it. A court reporter sat to the side, notebook poised. The ornate desk, its drawers still open from my earlier inspection, stood at the center, papers neatly assembled. Helena Ross gestured toward two chairs. "Ms. Brandt, please have a seat. This room is on the record," with the court reporter. I nodded and sat, placing Grandma's journal on my lap. Thomas perched opposite, her posture rigid. Her eyes darted between me and Helena. I watched her carefully, committed every micro-expression to memory. The lawyer began. "This meeting is intended to resolve the matter of the Langdon estate amicably. Ms. Brandt, would you like to start?" I inhaled slowly, gathering my thoughts. "Thank you. Everyone here knows why we're here. My grandmother's will named me sole beneficiary, and an addendum was forged to grant Thomas half the estate." Quote. Helena's lips tightened, but she remained silent. I continued. "I came prepared with Grandma's own words." I opened the journal and read aloud. "I entrust my granddaughter Rosalind to carry forward my dreams for this estate, to guide its resources toward art, education, and compassion." Thomas shifted. "Rosie, if Grandma wanted you to do all that, why did she never say it to me?" A question loaded with years of resentment. I closed the journal gently. "She did, in private. She trusted me to understand her heart, and now to honor it." I turned to Helena Ross. "Ms. Ross, do you have a confession?" Helena inhaled, then exhaled with practiced calm. I recommended my client attempt mediation. "Mediation?" I interjected, astonishment tinging my voice. "You called this a private meeting, but there was nothing amicable about forging that document." Helena raised an eyebrow. "Forgery is a strong word. We believed there was ambiguity in the wording of the will. Our intention was to clarify joint stewardship of the estate." I felt anger coil in my stomach. Clarity does not require deception. Thomas's eyes flashed. You don't understand what it's like to be overlooked, to feel invisible. I had no choice, Rosie. Silence followed. The court reporter's pen scratched softly. In that stillness, I saw Thomas's defenses crack. She looked vulnerable, but I couldn't relent. I leaned forward. What was your plan for the estate once it was split? How did you intend to honor Grandma's legacy? Thomas swallowed. I planned to keep the house intact, set up a joint foundation in her name. I wanted to... She paused, eyes glistening. I wanted to prove I could do something right. Something right. The root of it all. A need for approval twisted into dishonesty. I closed the journal and stood. We can end this now. You withdraw the addendum, and we go back to court with an agreement that enforces Grandma's true wishes. Funding scholarships, supporting the community center, restoring the theater wing as she wished. Thomas lowered her gaze, tears slipping down her cheeks. Helena Ross nodded slowly. Ms. Brandt, if you agree to these terms, we will sign a formal withdrawal of the addendum now. She slid a document across the desk. I glanced at Thomas. Her shoulders trembled. I sensed genuine remorse mixed with fear. I exhaled. I agree, let's set Grandma's legacy right. Thomas rose and approached me. I'm sorry, Rosalind. I lost my way. Quote. I nodded, my own emotions raw. I forgive you. But know this. You inherited more than money today. You inherited the responsibility to honor her truth. Helena cleared her throat. The court reporter indicated the document and the signatures. Thomas signed first, her pen trembling. Then I signed, adding a witness signature for clarity. The meeting was brief, formal in procedure, but profound in resolution. Thomas and I exchanged a quiet embrace, sisterhood reaffirmed despite the cost. We left the study together, the late afternoon sun painting the hallway walls in warm hues. Outside, Malcolm awaited. He offered no words. His nod said it all. Weeks later, in Judge Fletcher's chambers, our formal motion was granted. The forged addendum was struck, and the will named me sole beneficiary once more. But in the ruling, the judge acknowledged our agreement, a foundation established to carry out Grandma's philanthropic dreams. As we walked out of the courthouse, Thomas paused at the steps. Thank you, she said, her voice subdued. I placed a hand on her arm. We did what was right, together. And as the sun dipped below the skyline, I realized that inheritance wasn't just about wealth. It was about legacy, truth, and family reclaimed. The foundation launch was a modest affair, held in the restored theater wing that Grandma had dreamed of. Velvet curtains, newly repaired, framed the stage where our community gathered to celebrate her memory. Floral arrangements lined the aisles, and the scent of fresh paint mingled with aged timber. As I stood backstage, adjusting the microphone, I felt an unexpected tremor of nerves. Public speaking had never been my forte, but today's significance transcended any fear. Thomas stood beside me, her face illuminated by the stage lights. We shared a silent look, one of understanding, solidarity, and the shared weight of our grandmother's aspirations. It felt surreal that only weeks ago, we had stood on opposing sides of a legal battle. Now, we stood together to honor her legacy. The audience quieted as the mayor approached the podium. He spoke eloquently about Genevieve Langdon's generosity and vision, his words echoing through the ornate hall. Then he introduced me. I stepped forward, gripping the sides of the lectern. The hush was palpable. Dozens of faces turned towards me. Friends of Grandma, local philanthropists, scholarship recipients. I drew in a steadying breath and began. Thank you all for joining us today, I said, my voice clear. My grandmother believed that art, education, and compassion were the cornerstones of a thriving community. She dedicated her life to supporting those who yearned for opportunity but lacked the means. Today, we fulfill her dreams. I paused, glancing at Thomas, her eyes shining with pride. I spoke of scholarships, of funding for local theater programs, and the new community center. With each promise, the chatter in the auditorium hushed further, replaced by nods of approval and soft applause. I felt Grandma's spirit in every heartbeat. After the ceremony, the reception shifted to the lobby. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow as guests mingled. Thomas and I moved through the crowd, greeting old family friends and community leaders. Each handshake felt like a step closer to healing the wounds of our past. Later, alone in the quiet of the backstage corridor, Thomas turned to me. "Rosie, I know I hurt you. More than I can say, I'm sorry." Her voice trembled with sincerity. I offered a small smile. "None of this would have been possible without you stepping forward to correct your mistake. It took courage to face the truth." She exhaled. "You were always the one Grandma trusted. I was jealous of that bond. I thought I could replicate it, but I ended up betraying her instead." Thomas's gaze fell. "I want to make it right, truly." I studied her face, determination mixed with remorse. "Then let's do more than words. Let's build something together, for the community she loved." I placed a hand on her shoulder. She nodded, tears glistening. "I'd like that." Weeks turned into months as we worked side by side. We pored over grant applications, hosted fundraising events, and launched scholarship award ceremonies. The foundation became a living tribute to Grandma's vision and to our restored bond as sisters. Midway through one late-night planning session, I leaned back in my chair, exhaustion and exhilaration warring in my chest. The conference table was strewn with brochures and schedules. Outside, street lamps painted the window panes with golden bars of light. I rubbed my temples, the weight of countless decisions pressing down. Then I looked at Thomas, her pen scribbling notes furiously. She glanced up and smiled. "This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story." A laugh bubbled from me despite the fatigue. Her spontaneous call to action broke the tension, reminding me of why we were here. To share her legacy, to inspire others with tales of truth and redemption. We returned to our work with renewed energy, planning the anniversary gala, a starred affair featuring young artists, community leaders, and, of course, the scholarship winners. Through it all, I found a sense of purpose deeper than any courtroom victory. We were building something enduring. Late one evening, as the gala invitations glowed in the printer tray, my phone buzzed. An email from Hawthorne and Blake appeared, the subject line reading, "Estate closure and foundation approval." I swallowed and opened it. The firm confirmed that all court filings were complete, the estate legally closed, and the foundation's charter approved by the state. It was official. Grandma's final wishes were sealed, protected by law. I exhaled, a rush of relief sweeping through me. I closed my laptop and stretched, muscles stiff from hours of typing. Thomas leaned over my shoulder, peering at the screen. "We did it," she whispered. I nodded, smiling. "Together." But as I shut down the laptop, a sudden thought struck me. Details I'd overlooked in Grandma's journals. A reference to a second set of heirs, distant cousins who might be unaware of their stake. Questions sparked like embers in my mind. Did the foundation's charter account for every possible claimant? Was there another twist yet to surface? Tomorrow, I would reach out to our legal team. Tonight, though, I would savor this victory. The culmination of loss, betrayal, and ultimately, redemption. Night had fallen over the city when I finally closed the door to my apartment, exhaustion clinging to me like a second skin. Earlier that day, I had sent an urgent message to Malcolm, outlining my concerns about potential undisclosed heirs. His prompt reply assured me he was already investigating. Still, tension drummed in my veins as I crossed the threshold and flicked on the lights. I sank onto the leather couch, pulling my grandmother's journal into my lap. The passage I'd reread dozens of times stared back at me. "When the time comes, let the truth guide you to every soul that holds a part of our story." My gaze lifted to the framed photograph on the mantel. Grandma, seated in the same study where justice had played out, her eyes warm and knowing. Something about that line unsettled me. What other truth remained hidden? I sifted through the journal's pages, careful to note every reference to family gatherings, mentions of cousins, even offhand remarks about the Langdon branch in Devonshire. The name Devonshire churned in my mind. I'd assumed it was just an affectionate nickname for the Eastern Wing, but a quick online search revealed a prominent family in Devonshire, England, related by blood but estranged decades ago. I reached for my laptop. If there was any record of living Langdon cousins, it would be there. Typing furiously, I cross-referenced genealogical databases, scanning old census records and newspaper archives. As clues emerged, a new picture took shape. Distant cousins, two young sisters, perhaps unaware of their ties, living halfway across the globe. My phone buzzed with Malcolm's email. Preliminary search shows two possible living heirs, Celia and Rose Langdon, aged 28 and 31, residing in Bristol. Their mother, Margaret, passed away in 2010. They may not know of their heritage. Attached were scanned letters from a Langdon reunion invitation Grandma had sent in the late 1970s, an envelope never opened by Margaret. My heart pounded. If these cousins existed, the Foundation's charter needed to consider their shares. Otherwise, Thomas's and my efforts could be undone by their rightful claim. I grabbed my coat and headed out, determination replacing fatigue. I arrived at Hawthorne and Blake late that night. The lobby lights were dimmed, but the reception desk glowed faintly. Malcolm emerged from the elevators, briefcase slung over one shoulder. "Rosie, I have everything compiled," he said, leading me to a quiet conference room. He laid out documents, birth certificates, death records, letters, and our existing case file. If we wish to include Celia and Rose as contingent heirs, we must file an amendment to the Foundation's articles. It will require court approval, but given the spirit of Grandma's will, the judge should grant it. I nodded, reviewing each page. Every signature felt like a lifeline stretching across time and distance. "We should contact a solicitor in Bristol to verify their existence and willingness to participate," Malcolm added. "We can engage with them remotely at first." "Yes," I replied, head spinning with possibilities. "Tomorrow I'll draft the amendment request." That night, sleep eluded me. Instead, I drafted a careful letter to Celia and Rose, introducing myself, explaining the situation, and inviting them to join our Foundation's mission. I hesitated before hitting send, aware of the gravity of reaching across the Atlantic to unknown relatives. As dawn approached, a notification popped up. 3 new emails. One from Malcolm confirming the amendment draft. 2 others, responses already, from Celia and Rose. Heart pounding, I opened them. Celia's message: "Dear Ms. Brandt, I was stunned and honored to receive your letter. I'd love to learn more about our grandmother and her legacy. Please call me at your convenience." Rose's message: "Living in Bristol all my life, I never imagined having family in America. I'm intrigued and grateful. Let's talk." Tears pricked my eyes. The promise of connection, of restoring the full circle of Grandma's family, was real. Soon after, I arranged a video call. Their faces appeared on my screen. Tall, auburn-haired twins, their eyes bright with curiosity. We shared stories of our lives, laughed over resemblances in mannerisms, and spoke of Grandma's kindness through secondhand memories. By midday, the amendment request was finalized. Celia and Rose Langdon would be named contingent beneficiaries of the Foundation, eligible for involvement and potential shared oversight. We filed it in probate court with unanimous support from the board. A week later, Judge Fletcher signed the amendment, and the new charter was recorded. Snowy Bristol appeared on our Foundation's map, linking the West and the Old World in a tapestry of shared purpose. That evening, Thomas and I video-called the twins together, raising glasses of champagne in celebration. Laughter rippled through the screen. "To Grandma," Celia toasted. "And to family," Rose added. My sister and I exchanged a look. Despite the tumult of the past months, we'd brought Grandma's vision to life, honoring every strand of her heritage. As I closed my laptop, I felt a profound sense of completion. Yet I knew that the Foundation's work was only beginning. There were grants to approve, scholarships to award, community programs to launch. And through it all, 4 women, 2 in America, 2 in England, would carry forward a dream seeded by a woman who believed in the power of truth and compassion. Summer days brought vibrant energy to our Foundation's inaugural community workshop, an art therapy program for at-risk youth held at the newly renovated theater wing. I stood at the entrance, welcoming families as they arrived in clusters of excitement and nervous hope. Children clutched sketch pads. Parents hovered with cautious optimism. Thomas and I had spent weeks coordinating materials, volunteers, and panelists, and today was the culmination. The grand foyer buzzed with activity. Volunteers in navy polo shirts guided guests, handed out name tags, and directed attendees into the auditorium. I watched as a shy boy, no older than 10, approached the painting station, eyes wide at the array of brushes and colors. My heart tightened. I remembered my own childhood fears, the power of art to soothe a restless soul. Thomas joined me, clipboard in hand. "Everything's running on schedule," she whispered, "except we're short on canvases by 10. I frowned, scanning the tables. Sure enough, a stack of blank canvases was missing. "Don't worry," I said. "I'll find more." I dashed backstage, where supplies were stored. While rummaging through boxes, I overheard raised voices from the hallway. Creeping closer, I recognized the gruff tones of Marcus Hale, one of our major donors, and Elena Rodriguez, our program director. "These kids don't look like art enthusiasts," Marcus said, irritation lacing his words. "I gave $20,000, and I expect to see tangible results. Press coverage, gallery exhibits, not finger painting sessions." Elena's calm voice met his. "Mr. Hale, art therapy isn't about exhibitions. It's about healing. The children need a safe space to express themselves. We have journalism students from the local college scheduled to write feature stories." Marcus scoffed. "Therapy programs are fine, but I want data. Photos of finished works, testimonials, something marketable." My blood boiled. The program was built on Grandma's belief in compassion, not marketing metrics. I stepped into the hallway. "Marcus, is there a problem?" He turned, surprise flickering. "Ms. Brandt, I appreciate everything you've done, but I need assurances from the foundation board that my donation yields visibility." I squared my shoulders. "Grandma believed in impact, not optics. If you want press, we'll arrange coverage, but this program's priority is the children's well-being." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "You're going to jeopardize my contribution?" Before I could answer, Elena appeared, placing a gentle hand on Marcus's arm. "We have photographers scheduled right now. You'll have your coverage. But the children's experience comes first." He hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Fine, but next time, involve me in planning." As he strode away, I exhaled, adrenaline still coursing. "We'll be fine," I said, but doubt gnawed at me. Donor pressure could undermine our mission. Returning to the foyer, I found Thomas juggling questions from volunteers. I handed her the extra canvases I'd retrieved. "Sorted, but we need to anticipate more demands like this." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Let's get through today. Then we tackle fundraising strategy, balance impact with donor relations." The workshop commenced with opening remarks from a local therapist, followed by guided exercises. The auditorium transformed into a kaleidoscope of creativity, brushstrokes of every hue as children painted emotions, swirling blue for sadness, jagged red for anger, soft yellow for hope. I circled the room, offering encouragement. At one table, a girl named Maya hesitated, gaze fixed on a blank canvas. I crouched beside her. "What would you like to paint?" She shrugged, tears brimming. I don't know if I'm good." My grandmother's kind voice echoed. "Courage is showing up, even when you doubt yourself." "You don't have to be perfect," I said. "This is about you, your feelings. Try a single line, anywhere." Slowly, she dipped her brush and traced a pale green arc, her face lit with a shy smile. Behind her, the world seemed to soften. The workshop ended with a closing circle. Each child shared a word: hope, brave, family. Their voices rang clear. As I looked around, tears pricked my eyes. Thomas approached, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "We did it." I nodded. "Yes, but there's more to come." My phone buzzed with a new email flagged, "Urgent." I glanced at the subject. Financial audit findings. My heart skipped. An audit. Unexpected. I opened the message, eyes widening as I read. Discrepancies in the foundation's initial funding allocations. It suggested potential mismanagement or misappropriation. I looked at Thomas, alarm and dread rising. "We need to talk." And with that, a shadow fell over our triumph, a new battle looming to protect the integrity of everything we'd built. The email sat on my screen like a ticking time bomb. The subject line read, "Financial audit findings, immediate attention required." My heart pounded as I clicked it open. The body of the message detailed apparent discrepancies in the foundation's accounts. Expenses logged under the scholarship fund seemed to exceed income, payments to vendors were duplicated, and several receipts were missing. The tone was urgent, pointing to an external auditor's red flags. My first impulse was disbelief. I had personally overseen every transaction after the Foundation's charter was approved. Thomas had signed off on invoices. How could such glaring errors have slipped through? Worse, I feared this might be a deliberate sabotage, someone aiming to discredit our work. I rushed out of the house and into my car, dialing Malcolm as the streets blurred past. His calm voice greeted me. "Rosalind, I saw your email. The auditor recommends a full forensic review." "Do you think it's sabotage?" I asked, hands gripping the wheel. We were parked at a red light. "It's too soon to say, but the patterns are suspicious, payments totaling significant sums to companies that have no identifiable services rendered." "So what do we do?" "I'll convene an emergency board meeting this afternoon. We'll bring in the forensic accountant and review every line item." "All right, see you there." I ended the call and exhaled. The Foundation's conference room filled rapidly that afternoon. Board members, philanthropists, community leaders, even Celia and Rose, gathered around the long oak table. Papers rustled, murmurs rippled through the room. At the head sat Thomas, looking grave but composed. Malcolm began. "We've engaged Moore & Stokes, a forensic accounting firm. They'll join us on the call shortly. I've also asked Elena to present the current financial statements for review." Elena rose, her face pale but determined. "Here are the detailed ledgers since the Foundation's inception. Donations received, grants disbursed, operational expenses. Everything has been cross-checked against bank statements." The forensic accountant's voice crackled through the speakerphone. "Thank you for having us. Our preliminary findings indicate irregularities in 3 major areas. Duplicate vendor payments amounting to $45,000, unaccounted payments labeled consulting fees, and missing receipts totaling $12,500. We recommend suspending disbursements until these are resolved." A hush fell. Thomas and I exchanged a glance. This could undermine everything we'd built. Board members raised objections. Mrs. Diaz, a local business owner, spoke up. "Are you saying our scholarships are at risk? The students rely on this funding." I stood, drawing the room's attention. "I understand the concern, but the audit is a safeguard to ensure our integrity. We must clear these discrepancies swiftly to protect our mission." Rose's voice was steady. "We should also consider who had access to these accounts." Celia chimed in, "Yes, and implement additional checks and balances. No single individual should have unilateral approval." Malcolm continued, "I propose a 2-pronged approach: immediate forensic review and implementing stricter financial controls, dual signatories for payments, monthly reconciliations by an independent reviewer." Thomas stood. "I support these measures, and I volunteer to step back from direct financial oversight until the audit concludes." The room murmured approval. The board unanimously adopted the proposals. Relief and determination rippled through us. Over the next week, we worked tirelessly. Elena and the forensic team cross-referenced invoices, tracked vendor communications, and even conducted on-site interviews. I personally contacted vendors to verify services rendered. One company, Landmark Creative, confirmed only 1 payment had been made, contradicting our records that showed 2. Landmark CEO David Kim emailed a testimonial. "We value our partnership. The duplicate entry was an error on our system. We only processed 1 invoice." But other anomalies proved more worrisome. The consulting fees went to a shell company registered under a name I didn't recognize, Angelo & Sons Consulting. When the forensic team traced its registrations, they found it was dissolved 2 years ago, with no active operations. Then Elena discovered something chilling. The IP address used to upload the invoices to our accounting system traced back to a computer in the rehearsal room of the theater wing, accessible to all staff and volunteers. But only a handful of people had credentials to log in: Elena herself, the Foundation's coordinator Marcus, and a temporary intern Lucas Thompson. I felt my stomach drop. Lucas had been with us only for 2 months, managing digital archives. When I checked the access logs, His credentials were used late at night, outside of normal hours, to upload the fraudulent entries. I gathered Elena, Malcolm, Thomas, and the board liaison. "We need to confront Lucas," I said quietly. Marcus, looking stricken, spoke up. "He's a good kid, hardworking, but he's been acting nervous lately." I nodded. "We'll call him in for questioning, but keep it confidential. We don't want to alarm the other staff." That afternoon, I met Lucas in a small conference room. He looked pale, fidgeting with his ID badge. "Lucas," I began gently, "I need to ask you about the financial entries made in the system last week." He swallowed. I thought I was doing the right thing," he stammered. "I saw some numbers, and I thought the foundation needed more funds for operations. I didn't think it would go this far." Tears glistened in his eyes. My heart ached at his confession, but I remained firm. "You created false entries totaling over $50,000. You jeopardized scholarships and community programs." "I was desperate," he whispered. "My mother's medical bills. I lost my part-time job. I needed money. I thought if I could divert a little, no one would notice, and I'd pay it back." He looked at me, eyes pleading. "I'm sorry." The weight of guilt was unbearable. Silence stretched. Then I took a breath. "I appreciate your honesty, Lucas, but we have to protect the foundation's integrity." Marcus stepped forward, voice quiet but resolute. "We'll need to report this to the police, and UP hear him. He'll have to face legal consequences." Malcolm nodded. "And we'll pursue recovering the funds he misappropriated, if they haven't been spent." Lucas's shoulders slumped. "I understand." As I left the room, my heart was heavy. The foundation's work had been threatened from within by someone in need, reminding me that compassion extended beyond program recipients to those who served our mission. That evening, I met Thomas outside the theater. The neon sign flickered overhead as we walked the grounds. "I never imagined this kind of crisis," she said softly. "It's a test," I replied, "of our commitment to truth and compassion. We can't turn our backs on Lucas's situation. He needs help too, but we must also uphold our principles." Thomas nodded. "Let's rebuild stronger controls and offer Lucas support, within reason." She paused. "Grandma would have found a way to forgive." I looked at her, gratitude warming my chest. "And so will we." With that, we resolved to guide the foundation through its hardest trial yet, determined to emerge with renewed integrity and unwavering compassion. The morning sun filtered through the oak trees that lined the foundation's parking lot, casting dappled shadows across the cars. I parked and took a moment to breathe. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of court filings, foundation events, crises, and triumphs. But nothing could prepare me for what awaited inside. As I entered the building, the receptionist gave me a sympathetic nod. I sensed the pause in her step. She knew what had happened with Lucas and the audit. That pause spoke of concern, and I wished I could offer reassurance instead of new worries. My first meeting was with Officer Delgado from the Financial Crimes Unit. He sat in a small, windowless office, his badge gleaming on the desk beside him. "Ms. Brandt," he began, sliding a folder across to me, "we've reviewed the evidence. We're classifying this as embezzlement and identity falsification. You'll need to decide whether to press charges or pursue an alternative resolution." His gaze was steady. I closed my eyes briefly, the weight of the decision pressing down. Lucas confessed and cooperated fully. He's remorseful, and repayment plans can be arranged. I'd like to explore diversion programs that include restitution and community service, rather than pursuing full charges. Officer Delgado nodded. "I can recommend a pretrial intervention program. It would allow Lucas to avoid a criminal record if he meets the restitution and service requirements." "Please proceed," I said firmly. "I believe in second chances." He jotted notes. "I'll file the request. We'll need a letter from you outlining the foundation's stance." I left feeling a mix of relief and resolve. Justice tempered with mercy, a lesson I'd learned from Grandma and one I hoped Lucas would carry forward. Next, I met with Celia and Rose via video call. Their faces filled my laptop screen, a morning routine across time zones. They conveyed their delight at being part of the pretrial intervention program plan for Lucas. "This approach reflects Grandma's spirit," Celia said, smiling. "Compassion in action." Rose nodded. They'll even offer community service at our theater with Bristol's youth programs. I felt a warmth spread through me. Exactly. We support accountability and growth. As the call ended, a notification pinged, an invitation to speak at the upcoming State Philanthropy Summit. It was an honor, but the timing was tricky. Preparations for our next fundraising gala were in full swing. I immediately called Thomas. We've been invited to speak at the summit in 2 weeks. It's a chance to share our model, integrating philanthropy with social justice. She paused. We'd need a presentation, data, testimonials, impact stories. But it could elevate our foundation nationally. I exhaled. Let's do it. We'll make it work. That afternoon, I dove into preparations, pulling reports and reaching out to scholarship recipients for video testimonials. Meanwhile, Thomas coordinated with the marketing team for visuals and speeches. Evening settled as we tracked the gala's ticket sales. Then, out of the blue, an email arrived from our longtime sponsor, Dr. Elena Stein, a visionary benefactor who had quietly funded our scholarship endowment. She requested an urgent meeting the next morning. My heart skipped. Dr. Stein's support had been unwavering. An urgent meeting suggested a new opportunity, or a crisis. The next day, I met her in her private garden, a serene oasis behind her historic brownstone. She offered me freshly brewed tea and tea cakes shaped like leaves. "Rosalind," she said at once, her tone both excited and cautious. "I have the chance to open doors for us at the university level. They're launching a scholarship program for first-generation college students and need a foundation partner. They want our name on the program." My mind raced with possibilities. This could amplify our impact, reaching students far beyond our local community. That's incredible. What would it entail? Dr. Stein leaned forward. A matching grant, $50,000 from the university if we raise another $50,000. Plus, they'd host an annual lecture series in Grandma's name. Her eyes sparkled. But they need a commitment by the end of the week. I felt the familiar rush of challenge, tight deadlines, high stakes. But the opportunity was too good to pass up. I nodded. "We can do it. I'll rally our board and donors." She smiled. "That's why I trust you." I left the garden invigorated. Back in my office, I drafted proposals and called key donors. With Thomas's help, we secured half the needed pledge within hours and organized a fundraiser event, an intimate dinner with donors, university officials, and scholarship students. 6 days later, under the warm glow of candlelit tables in the theater wing, we announced the match commitment. The audience erupted in applause. The university's president took the podium, reaffirming their support for our partnership. As I watched the students, bright-eyed and grateful, smile at camera flashes, I felt a profound sense of purpose. From a forged will to a thriving foundation, this journey had tested us, shaped us, and ultimately united us in Grandma's vision. But as I stepped off the stage, flushed with triumph, my phone buzzed once more, a news notification about a sudden outbreak of protests against local funding cuts to arts programs. Our theater wing was specifically mentioned as a potential at-risk site. I stared at the screen, dread rising. Even our sanctuary of creativity was vulnerable. I turned to Thomas, who appeared at my side. "Looks like our next challenge is just around the corner." Her eyes met mine, determined. "Then we face it head-on. Together." The morning protests began like distant rumblings, social media alerts blinking with outrage against municipal budget cuts to arts and community programs. By mid-afternoon, flyers decorated lampposts. "Save our arts, defend the theater wing." Our haven of hope, the very space Grandma had envisioned, was under threat. I left my office and drove to City Hall, determination in every press of the pedal. At the protest's epicenter, a crowd had gathered on the steps. Artists, parents, students, and local activists carrying signs painted with bright colors. Thomas was already there, her face set with resolve, as she addressed the crowd with a borrowed megaphone. "Friends, this theater is more than brick and mortar. It's a sanctuary for imagination, a classroom for life's lessons, and a bridge across generations." Her voice rang clear. Cheers rose in response. I slipped through the throng and joined her on the steps. Raising the megaphone to my lips, I echoed her sentiment. My family's legacy is rooted in this space. We will not stand by as it's threatened. The crowd surged with applause. Local news cameras captured our stand. I felt the old spark of Grandma's courage igniting. After the rally, I arranged an emergency meeting with the City Council's Arts Committee. In the polished chamber, council members shuffled papers, their faces a mixture of concern and reservation. Councilmember Richardson spoke first. Ms. Brandt, we sympathize, but the budget is strained. We're facing increased costs across all departments. I nodded. I understand fiscal pressures, but cutting this wing would decimate community programs serving hundreds. We propose a public-private partnership. The foundation can cover maintenance costs through a sponsorship program, reducing the city's burden. Richardson raised an eyebrow. You take on ongoing expenses? Yes, I replied, and will coordinate volunteer efforts for upkeep. It's sustainable and keeps the theater accessible. Councilmember Diaz added, funding through the foundation's gala could allocate proceeds directly here. Murmurs of agreement followed. After deliberation, the committee deferred the vote, instructing staff to draft partnership terms. It was a win, but fragile. That evening, a small delegation met at the theater wing to draft the agreement. Under the ornate balcony, Thomas and I pored over legal language with Malcolm and council aides. Hours later, a preliminary MOU was signed. The foundation would assume maintenance costs and manage programming with oversight by a joint city foundation board. We emerged into the night, weary but victorious. The theater wing was safe, for now. Weeks passed. The partnership took shape. Volunteer cleanup days, community classes, and ticketed performances whose proceeds funded upkeep. The theater thrummed with life once more. But in those months, I felt a new undercurrent. Tension between prioritizing fiscal responsibility and maintaining inclusivity. Some board members worried about rising costs. Others, like Rose and Bristol, urged us to expand programs. One afternoon, I met with the MOU Oversight Board. The discussion grew heated when a council aide suggested limiting free community events to enhance revenue. Concerned parents bristled. Volunteers glared. I realized that protecting space wasn't enough. We had to preserve the foundation's founding values. I rose, voice firm. Our agreement with the city must reflect not only financial viability, but also Grandma's spirit of compassion. If we commodify access, we betray her vision. Silence followed my words. Then Marcus, now head of volunteer coordination, stood. She's right. We must balance both. The board nodded, and amendments were proposed to guarantee a portion of events remain free and inclusive. It was a delicate dance, safeguarding financial health without sacrificing accessibility. That night, as I closed the theater's doors, I caught my reflection in the glass. A woman forged by adversity, standing guard over a legacy of hope. Tomorrow, we would celebrate the theater's anniversary, a symbol of resilience. I typed an email to Thomas. Ready for the gala speech, remember to include the call to action for our next story. Her reply was swift. Absolutely. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications. A wry smile curved my lips. Our journey, 20 parts woven with conflict and redemption, was far from over. But tonight, under the glow of the marquee, I felt the warmth of home. The dawn light filtered through the gauzy curtains of Grandma's study, illuminating the custom oak desk that had witnessed decades of family history. I sat there, pen in hand, scrolling through the final guest list for the theater's anniversary gala. Invitations had gone out weeks ago, and RSVPs poured in, neighbors, donors, scholarship recipients, even city officials. It was set to be our grandest celebration yet. Thomas appeared at the doorway, silhouetted by the morning sun. She held 2 cups of coffee, steam curling upward like whispered promises. Morn, Rosie, you ready? The speech is at 7. She handed me a cup. I accepted it gratefully, as ready as I can be. I took a sip, bitter, grounding. She glanced at the desk. See you tonight, break a leg. I nodded, turning back to the list. Every name represented a story, a thread in the tapestry Grandma had envisioned. And yet, amid the excitement, I felt a tremor of unease. No surprise, given our history. Later that day, the theater hummed with activity. Florists worked their magic, draping garlands across the balcony. Caterers bustled in the kitchen. Volunteers coordinated final rehearsals for the student performers. I navigated the chaos with practiced calm, offering thanks and reassurance. Then, in the lobby, I paused at a table with framed photographs, snapshots of the Foundation's journey. In one, Lucas stood beside me, scrubbing chairs during a volunteer cleanup. In another, Celia and Rose beamed during a joint scholarship ceremony. At the center, a portrait of Grandma smiled down, her eyes full of pride. A soft voice interrupted my reverie. Beautiful tribute. I turned to see Mayor Caldwell dressed in evening attire. Thank you for coming. He nodded. Your family's legacy has revitalized this community. I'm honored to be here tonight. He leaned lower. Expecting good things, yes? I reassured him and moved on, but the encounter sparked a realization. With increased visibility came increased scrutiny. The gala would attract press, social media buzz. Any misstep could unravel our work. As dusk fell, guests arrived. The lobby glowed with soft chandeliers, classical music drifting from the stage. I greeted attendees, masks of formality concealing my nerves. The program began with a video montage, funding launches, community programs, voices of young beneficiaries. The screen faded and I took the stage. Welcome, everyone, I began, heart pounding. Tonight, we celebrate not just bricks and mortar, but the power of community and compassion. I spoke of Grandma's vision, the trials we'd faced, from forged documents to internal crises, and the triumphs that followed. Every sentence carried the weight of lived experience. This theater is proof that truth endures, that even when trust is betrayed, integrity can prevail. Cheers rose. As I concluded, 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications. I paused, letting the words settle. Then applause surged. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Waltzes, toasts, laughter. Yet amid the celebration, I scanned the crowd, wary of hidden agendas. By midnight, the gala wound down. I stood alone on the balcony, gazing at the empty seats below. Moonlight kissed the stage, and I could almost feel Grandma's presence. A gentle cough startled me. Thomas joined me, her expression reflective. We did it, I whispered. She nodded. We did. But there's always a next chapter. I smiled, eyes shining. Then let's write it, together. The early autumn wind carried a crisp promise of change as I stepped into the Foundation's new administrative offices, a space once reserved for the rehearsal hall, now transformed into a bustling hub of strategy and collaboration. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, illuminating the rows of desks where Celia, Rose, and our core team gathered. Maps and spreadsheets spread across conference tables. I paused at the entrance, absorbing the scene. Interns huddled over laptops, volunteers phoning prospective donors, and Thomas leading a brainstorming session at the whiteboard. It was a portrait of growth, one I had scarcely imagined just months ago when this journey began with a single forged document. Thomas looked up, her eyes bright with anticipation. Rosie, just in time. We're reviewing the community outreach metrics for the theater and the new university scholarship program. The data shows a 25% increase in engagement since the summer workshops. A hum of pride and relief rose within me. That's phenomenal. Let's discuss how to sustain this momentum over the winter months. I stepped forward, unrolling a series of charts that illustrated our year-over-year growth in scholarship applications, event attendance, and social media reach. But as we delved into strategy, a soft ping from my phone interrupted the flow, an urgent news alert. My chest tightened. Another round of arts funding protests had erupted, this time at the state capitol. Legislation aimed at reducing educational budgets threatened our university partnership. The implications were grave. A cut in funding could force the shutdown of the very program we had fought to establish with Dr. Stein. I excused myself and retreated to a quiet corner, opening the alert. State Senate to vote on Education Bill 212, proposed cuts to arts and humanities scholarships. I exhaled, mind racing. The summit speech, the gala, the local battle. Each victory had been hard won. Now the fight shifted to the legislative arena. Determination surged. I tapped out a message to Thomas. Emergency meeting in 10. Senate vote on Bill 212. Need mobilization plan. Moments later, we reconvened with urgency. The office buzzed with activity as we assigned roles. Advocacy letters to state representatives, a social media campaign using our students' stories, and a coalition with other local foundations. Celia would coordinate digital outreach. Rose would liaise with university officials to gather testimonials. Thomas and I would draft op-eds for the state newspaper. As the day slipped into evening, the office stayed alight. Volunteers made calls, designers crafted graphics, and scholarship alumni recorded video endorsements. I watched it all, heart swelling with pride. Grandma's legacy was no longer confined to her estate. It had become a living movement. Deep into the night, I drafted my op-ed, remembering Grandma's words, "Cultural investment is the seed of human potential." Signing off, I scheduled it for publication at dawn, hoping to sway a few votes before the Senate convened. And as the skyline darkened and the city lights flickered on, I realized the next chapter of our story was upon us. A battle for the soul of education itself. One that would test our resilience and unite us in purpose once more. Sunrise broke over the state capitol as I raced through the corridors of the Senate office wing, clutching a stack of printed op-eds and letters from our foundation's supporters. Security scanners beeped as staffers scanned their badges. The air thrummed with anticipation for the impending vote on Education Bill 212. Thomas trailed behind me, clutching her tablet. "I've secured a meeting with Senator Patel before the vote. She's a swing vote on arts funding." We reached the senator's ornate suite. Thomas exchanged a few words with the aide, and we were ushered into a leather-paneled office. Senator Patel, poised at her desk, looked up with polite curiosity. "Ms. Brandt, Ms. Keegan, thank you for coming so early." I nodded, offering a warm smile. "Senator, I appreciate your time. I brought endorsements from students, educators, and community leaders. And this op-ed in the State Journal highlights how scholarships and arts programs have transformed lives." I handed her the materials. Thomas added, "Our foundation can supplement the program with private fundraising if the state commits even a fraction of its proposed budget. It's a public-private partnership model that has proven sustainable at the local level." Senator Patel scanned the documents, her expression thoughtful. "This is compelling, but there are many competing priorities: public safety, infrastructure." I leaned forward. Art and education aren't luxuries, they're investments. Billions in economic impact flows from creative industries. Denying funding to students today risks stifling innovation tomorrow. She nodded slowly. "I understand. I'll consider your proposal in the debate." As we exited, Thomas exhaled, relief mingled with tension. "That went well, I think." We spent the next hour in a crowded gallery, watching as senators took the floor. Our texts arrived. Messages of support from grassroots activists. Posts sharing our foundation story flooding social media. The gavel banged as debate closed, and the clerk called the roll vote. My heartbeat accelerated with each name. Aye, nay, aye. And then, Senator Patel, aye. Cheers erupted around me. Education Bill 212 passed with amendments preserving arts scholarships. The gallery ascended in applause. Later, on the steps of the Capitol, reporters swarmed. I offered a brief statement. Today, we reaffirmed our belief that every student deserves access to the arts. This victory belongs to all who raised their voices. As cameras snapped, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment, but also the reminder that our work would never truly end. The fight for truth, compassion, and legacy had taken us from courtrooms to community halls to legislative chambers. And the next horizon beckoned. But for now, I inhaled the crisp autumn air, turned to Thomas, and smiled. "Let's go home." A hush fell over the conference room as Malcolm tapped the final slide on the screen, the quarterly impact report. The numbers glowed in crisp columns. Percentage increases in student engagement, scholarship applications, community event attendance. Our foundation had not only weathered storms, it had thrived. I sank into the leather chair, throat dry, my mind elsewhere, back to that courtroom where everything began. The forged addendum, the battle for truth, The sisters' betrayal that led to an unbreakable bond. And now, year after year, the legacy continued to blossom. Thomas leaned over. "This is extraordinary. We should share these results at the next board meeting." I nodded absently. "Yes, but I can't shake the feeling that we've taken on more than we realized. Each victory brings new challenges." She offered a sympathetic smile. "That's the nature of stewardship. But we're not alone. We have Celia, Rose, Elena, the board, and our teams." My phone buzzed. A text from Celia in Bristol. "Autumn Gala success. Scholar recipient Emily's speech went viral. Amazing impact." I smiled at the reach we'd achieved. Suddenly, the building's security system blared. An alarm. Everyone jumped up. Malcolm checked his watch. The archives vault alarm. The archives vault, where Grandma's original documents and the Foundation's historical files were stored. We rushed through the silent halls, footsteps echoing. I reached the vault door, keycard trembling in my hand. It swung open to reveal a scene of chaos. Files strewn across the floor, the original signed while torn from its frame and missing. "No," I whispered, heart in my throat. "This can't be happening." Elena, who'd followed us, gasped. "The Foundation's history." Thomas's voice shook with anger. "Who would? Why?" I felt a cold dread. The theft was calculated. Someone wanted to erase our Foundation's roots, to steal the very proof of Grandma's intention. Without that original will, the legal backbone of the Foundation could be jeopardized. Malcolm examined the scene, eyes narrowed. "We need to secure the area and call the police. I'll inform the board." I cradled Grandma's journal, safe in my arms, but I knew it alone wouldn't suffice. We needed that will, and now the race was on to recover it before anyone could weaponize its absence. Later at the police station, I gave a statement. Detective Moreno listened intently. "We'll check for fingerprints, surveillance footage. Any suspects?" My mind raced. Who would have motive? The intern? No, he was cleared. A disgruntled staff member? Or someone from outside, enemies of our work? Detective Moreno nodded. "We'll start with staff and volunteers who accessed the vault. We'll also review visitor logs." "We'll find it, Ms. Brandt." Outside, the evening sky was bruised with twilight. Thomas slipped her arm through mine. "We'll find it." I exhaled, steeling myself. The Foundation's greatest threat yet lay before us, a hidden adversary determined to unravel everything we'd built. But if Grandma taught me anything, it was that truth and perseverance could overcome any betrayal. Together we would hunt for the missing will, unearth the culprit, and secure Grandma's legacy once more. Dawn broke in pale pinks over the city skyline as I returned to the Foundation's administrative offices, determination fueling each step. The theft of Grandma's original will weighed on every heart within these walls. Without it, legal challenges could threaten our very existence. Thomas waited for me in the lobby, arms crossed, eyes red-rimmed from a sleepless night. "Any word from the detective?" I shook my head. "He's running fingerprints and reviewing surveillance. But we can't wait in limbo. We need to start our own investigation." She nodded. "Let's assemble the team." In the conference room, 4 of us, Thomas, Malcolm, Elena, and I, huddled around the vault's visitor log. The vault's keypad recorded every access, date, time, and ID card used. I traced the entries from the week of the gala anniversary to the night of the theft. All legitimate, except for a gap, a 30-minute window after closing when the system showed an access code override. Malcolm frowned. "That code is protocol-level. Only the head of archives and the director of operations have it. Elena and I both have entries here, but neither of us accessed it that night." Elena bit her lip. "Lucas doesn't have that code, nor do any volunteers." I tapped my fingers. "What about Dr. Stein? Grand benefactors often get special behind-the-scenes tours." The log showed one staff override that evening, Drive Stein's ID, clocking in at 10:47 p.m. Elena's voice trembled. She was here for the donor podium rehearsal. She had access to the building. I stared at the log. We need to talk to her. The detective arrived mid-morning, grim-faced. We have to consider foul play, but also that this is an inside job. I'll need any suspicions you have. He peered at us expectantly. I exhaled. Your log shows Dr. Stein accessed the vault on the night of the anniversary. Was that recorded? He frowned. Let me check. He thumbed through his notepad. Yes, there was a note about an override. Strange. Overlooked in initial review. I looked at Thomas. She visited alone for less than 5 minutes. We need to call her in. We summoned Dr. Stein to the Foundation offices. When she arrived, she wore her usual air of calm authority, but her eyes flickered with uncertainty. Barbara, I began, using her first name in the quiet room, we need clarity about your access the night of the gala. Surveillance shows you alone at the vault door. Her composure cracked. She sighed and sat. I did access the vault. I was ensuring the archival materials were properly stored before the gala. I had no idea it would be locked up again. Her voice faltered. I came early this morning, planning to retrieve a family letter of mine. Something personal I'd seen there once, but I found everything was in place. I thought it was just misplaced. I pressed gently. Barbara, the original will is missing. Did you see it? Tears welled. No, I would never do that. That document meant everything to me. She reached for a handkerchief. Someone must have planted the override on my ID. Malcolm exchanged glances with the detective. We'll verify her alibi and cross-check building logs. But if she's innocent, someone used her credentials. Her shoulders slumped. I'm so sorry. I only love this foundation. Grandma's legacy is my passion too. We released her with a promise to cooperate. As Dr. Stein left, I realized the true culprit had covered their tracks by impersonating someone we all trusted. Over the next 48 hours, we pored over forensic IT logs. The override IP traced back to a network terminal in the rehearsal room, same as the Lucas breach. But this too could be manipulated. Then Malcolm uncovered a receipt from a local print shop. One envelope printed at 7 p.m. on the night of the gala, addressed to an abandoned warehouse address. The same warehouse listed on the city's decommissioned industrial sites map. I felt a spark of hope. That's our lead. Let's go. Quote, under cover of night, we ventured to the warehouse district. The building loomed, silent and foreboding. We slipped inside, flashlights piercing the gloom. In the center of a concrete floor sat an old wooden crate, its lid ajar. Elena's breath was sharp. It can't be, she shone her beam inside. There, folded in pristine condition, lay the original will, its ink gleaming in the flashlight's beam. I knelt, heart pounding. Grandma, your truth! But even as relief washed over me, I knew the mystery wasn't over. This was too deliberate, too staged. Someone wanted to make sure we found it, yet leave us vulnerable until the last moment. Thomas placed a hand on my shoulder. We'll bring it back. And then we'll unmask whoever did this. With the will safe in hand, we exited into the night, ready for the final showdown. Night cloaked the warehouse district in obsidian shadows as Thomas and I returned to recover the final piece of evidence. And we hoped, unmask the saboteur. The gated entrance loomed silent. The air was thick with anticipation. Even after hours, the memory of discovering Grandma's missing will in that weathered crate pulsed through me like an electric current. Ready? Thomas whispered, her breath visible in the chill. I nodded, activating the flashlight app on my phone. Together, we slipped through the rusted door, steps echoing on the concrete floor. Our core team, Malcolm, Elena, and Detective Moreno, flanked us, each armed with tools for forensic investigation. Evidence bags, UV lamps, fingerprint kits. The crate sat where we'd found it, its lid removed. But the warehouse was vast, and the flicker of our lights revealed new details. A faint set of footprints in the dust leading toward an alcove, a smear of dried glue on the crate's underside, and, most eerily, a single white glove discarded near a broken window. Malcolm crouched beside the crate. We'll bag the will first, preserve fingerprints, then we follow the prints. Detective Moreno used tweezers to lift the glove, placing it into an evidence bag labeled Item Number 47. Elena snapped photographs as I carefully packed the faded parchment into a protective sleeve. Rosie, Detective Moreno murmured, voice low. The footprints are small, likely competitive with a woman's size 5 shoe. The tread matches nothing in our volunteer inventory. Thomas's eyes narrowed. Only a handful of people had access to volunteer logs. Elena's interns and local staff. Lucas and Dr. Stein are cleared. That leaves one, Marcus. Elena's gasp echoed. Marcus Hale? The major donor who'd complained about lack of visibility during the children's workshop. Could he be desperate enough to undermine us? We followed the footprints to the alcove, where a small table held an open laptop. The USB port was empty, but paper scraps littered the floor. Fragments of newspaper clipping. An article about our foundation's financial audit, timestamped to last month. Malcolm pocketed the scraps. He's been tracking our every move. I clenched my fists. Let's bring him in. Our team exited the warehouse and split. Detective Moreno called in for a warrant. Thomas and I returned to the foundation to confront Marcus under the guise of a donor meeting. Malcolm and Elena remained to process the scene. Back at headquarters, I found Marcus in the conference room, waiting. He rose with forced cheer. Rosalind! I was just reviewing donor reports. His suit was impeccable, his smile too bright. I'm glad you're here, Marcus, I began, voice steady. We need to discuss an incident at the warehouse. He blinked. Warehouse? Thomas stepped in, sliding the newspaper fragments onto the table. Do you recognize these scraps? He leaned forward, scanning the words. His hand trembled as he put coffee cups and pens aside. That article is public record. Public record you cut apart and brought here? I pressed. We have your glove, your footprints, and police fingerprint analysis linking you to the vault override. Marcus's face drained of color. I only wanted to protect my investment. When the audit flagged discrepancies, I feared the foundation would collapse, and my donation would be wasted. I thought if I could retrieve the will and discredit the audit. I saw remorse in his eyes. You nearly destroyed everything. Our mission, Grandma's legacy. For what? More press? A sense of control? He hung his head. I was ashamed. I never meant harm. I wanted to restore order, my way. Silence fell. Thomas exhaled softly. We appreciate your honesty, but we must press charges. However, we're willing to recommend leniency if you publicly apologize and help restore public trust. Marcus nodded miserably. I will. I'll do whatever it takes. Detective Moreno entered at that moment, badge visible. Mr. Hale, you're under investigation for tampering with evidence and theft of property. If you cooperate fully, we'll note your restitution recommendation. Quote, Marcus held out trembling hands. I understand. Weeks later, at a press conference held in Grandma's restored theater wing, Marcus read a formal apology. My actions threatened a foundation that stands for truth and compassion. I beg forgiveness and offer my continued support to restore faith in this institution. I stood beside Thomas on the stage, heart heavy but resolute. The audience's applause was tentative but genuine. Our foundation had weathered its greatest internal crisis and emerged stronger. As the conference ended, I whispered to Thomas, We've won again, but the true victory lies in forgiveness and unity. She smiled, eyes bright. And in writing the next chapter, one of resilience, truth, and hope. We left the stage together, the sound of applause fading, minds ready for the journey ahead. The aftermath of Marcus's apology rippled through the foundation like a gentle tide, resolving one crisis while exposing another layer of our collective strength. Yet, as Thomas and I returned to the quiet of Grandma's study that evening, I sensed an undercurrent of anticipation, as if the next challenge waited just beyond the door. Are you all right? Thomas asked, her voice soft in the lamplit room. She slid a fresh cup of chamomile tea onto my desk, the steam swirling in hazy circles. I nodded, though my mind raced. I thought, after everything, we could focus on growth, but I have a feeling we're on the cusp of something big. Something I can't quite name. She offered a sympathetic smile. Grandma always said that true legacy evolves beyond our expectations. Perhaps this is our moment to redefine it once more. As if summoned, my phone buzzed with an email notification. Subject line, urgent, international donor inquiry. I frowned and opened it. The message was from a foundation in Geneva, Switzerland. Dear Ms. Brandt, we have reviewed your foundation's innovative public-private partnership approaches and wish to discuss collaboration on a global scale. Can we schedule a video call at your earliest convenience? My heart skipped. International recognition? This could catapult Grandma's vision beyond national borders. But it also meant navigating complex legal frameworks, cultural differences, and amplified scrutiny. I closed the laptop and looked at Thomas. They want a partner, a chance to take the foundation global. Her eyes sparkled. That could fulfill Grandma's dream in ways she never imagined. Quote, a thrilling tension coiled in my chest. Let's do it. But we'll need to prepare our pitch, adapt our model for an international stage, and ensure our governance structures can handle it. Over the next days, our team assembled in the conference room, the core group plus Dr. Stein, Celia, and Rose, tuning in via video link. Whiteboards filled with mind maps, Geneva Foundation collaboration, cross-cultural philanthropy, legal compliance, global scholarship program. The air buzzed with excitement and cautious calculation. I opened the discussion. We've proven our model domestically, impact-driven, transparent, compassionate. Now we must translate it across languages, legal systems, and local needs. We need a framework that honors our values while adapting to new contexts. Rose nodded. We should pilot a joint scholarship for first-generation university students in Geneva, then expand to underprivileged communities in rural areas. Celia added, and we can share our forensic controls model, dual signatories, public accountability reports, to build trust internationally. Dr. Stein chimed in, I'll coordinate with legal counsel in Switzerland. We need to navigate EU philanthropy regulations, tax treaties, and data protection laws. Thomas sketched out a timeline. Phase 1, Memorandum of Understanding. Phase 2, Pilot Program Launch. Phase 3, Impact Evaluation and Scale-Up. I watched them work, a swell of pride and responsibility. This was more than growth. It was stewardship on a planetary scale. But also precarious. Any misstep could undermine our reputation. That evening, I prepared for the video call with the Geneva Foundation's board. As I queued up my camera, I rehearsed speaking points. Grandma's legacy, our domestic successes, the vision for global impact. The call connected and dignified faces filled the screen. Philanthropists, academic leaders, and legal advisors. Their spokesperson, Dr. Margot Dubois, spoke first. Ms. Brandt, your foundation's resilience and innovation inspire us. We propose a collaboration to create the Langdon Dubois Global Scholars Program, focusing on arts leadership. I nodded, voice steady. It would be an honor. We have a blueprint for scholarships, refuge programs, and community engagement. We're ready to adapt to Geneva's cultural landscape. As the call progressed, details crystallized. Shared funding, governance committees, student exchanges, research grants. But when Dr. Dubois asked about our crisis history, audit scandal, internal theft, legislative battles, I felt a knot in my stomach. They wanted transparency, of course, but I wondered how deeply they'd probe. I took a breath and spoke truthfully. We've faced significant challenges, fraudulent wills, internal sabotage, fiscal crises, and each time we relied on accountability, compassion, and unwavering commitment to our mission. Those experiences strengthened our governance and deepened our understanding of ethical stewardship. Silence hung, then Dr. Dubois smiled warmly. Your honesty confirms our belief in a truly transparent partnership. We will draft a preliminary MOU by next week. The call ended with mutual expressions of excitement. I leaned back, breathing deeply. The path ahead was daunting, but possibilities shimmered in the horizon. Thomas appeared at the doorway. So? I closed my laptop. It's on. We have to prepare for the biggest leap yet. She placed a hand on my shoulder. We'll do it. Together we'll make Grandma proud. As night settled over the city, I imagined the Foundation's name etched across continents, a living testament to truth, compassion, and the enduring power of legacy. But I also knew that greater reach meant greater risks. And somewhere, a new challenge awaited, one that would define the next era of our story. The biting winter wind whipped across the Geneva courtyard as I stepped out of the ornate stone building, my breath crystallizing in the cold air. The promise of the Langdon Dubois Global Scholars Program pulsed in my chest. a lifeline from this city of fairy tales and frost. But as I gazed at the ancient facade, I realized that the harder part lay ahead, turning an idea into reality across continents. Thomas, bundled in a woolen coat, hurried to close the distance. "It's surreal here, isn't it?" she said, pulling her scarf tighter. I nodded, scanning the rows of cobblestones. "It's beautiful, but we have so much to coordinate. Legal frameworks, local partnerships, translation of our scholarship criteria, not to mention aligning our technology platforms for remote selection committees." She offered a reassuring smile. "We're not alone. Our Geneva counterparts have been patient and eager, and our team back home is ready." At the hotel's conference suite, we joined representatives from Dubois, their board of directors, university liaisons, and legal counsel. Round tables were arranged near a panoramic window overlooking the snow-dusted cityscape. Dr. Margot Dubois, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy ensemble, opened the meeting. "Ms. Brandt, Ms. Keegan, welcome to Geneva. Today, we finalize the MOU and outline our pilot program." Her French accent lent a melodic lilt to her English. I nodded, flipping open my notebook. "Thank you for hosting. I've prepared a detailed proposal, including budget allocations, candidate selection processes, and program timelines." I passed out printed copies. Thomas began walking the group through the key points: student eligibility, mentorship structures, and funding disbursement. Multilingual translations glowed on the screen behind her: French, German, and English. The conversation flowed smoothly until Professor Laurent Leclerc, a steely-eyed academic, raised an eyebrow. "Your domestic model is impressive, Ms. Brandt, but cultural expectations differ. In Switzerland, student privacy is sacrosanct. We cannot publish testimonials without explicit consent. How will you adapt your communication strategy?" I leaned forward. "We will secure written consent, respect privacy regulations, and offer anonymous story formats. We can produce generalized impact reports rather than named profiles, still conveying the transformative power without infringing on privacy." He nodded reluctantly. "Agreed, but also mindful of European GDPR requirements." Our legal counsel, Dr. Erica Fisher, a tall woman with wire-rimmed glasses, interjected. "We've built data handling protocols to meet GDPR standards, including encrypted databases and limited access logs. All candidate data will reside on servers located within the EU." She tapped her tablet to display the technical architecture. I exhaled quietly. "That addresses our compliance concerns. Thank you." As the meeting progressed, we tackled tax treaty implications, scholarship stipend calculations in Swiss francs and US dollars, and joint oversight committee composition. Every point required negotiation, balance, and cultural sensitivity. Mid-afternoon, a break was called. I stepped outside onto a small balcony for fresh air. Below, tourists, clustered by the Rhine Falls postcards, swirling spray glittering in the pale sun. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with urgent messages from home. Snowfall had paralyzed our city, threatening an upcoming in-person awards ceremony. I frowned, tapping out a reply to Thomas. "Heavy snowstorm here. Need contingency plan for awards gala. Can you coordinate virtually?" Her quick response blinked. "Already on it, don't worry." As I pocketed the phone, a voice startled me. "Ms. Brandt?" I turned to see Professor Leclerc standing behind me, hands in his coat pockets. "I apologize for the intrusion, but I wanted to speak with you. Your foundation's resilience is, uncommon. I've studied philanthropic organizations for decades, and yours seems uniquely capable of weathering crises." He gestured toward the swirling snow. I offered a polite smile. "Thank you. We've had our share of trials." He nodded, face thoughtful. "One concern arises: transparency. In Geneva, some question foreign donors directing local scholarships. How will you ensure accountability on the ground?" His question echoed challenges we'd face domestically: trust in governance and oversight. I took a breath. "We will establish a mixed steering committee, equal representation from the Dubois board, local university officials, and our foundation's global oversight team. Meetings will be publicized, minutes published, and financial statements audited by an independent Swiss firm. This ensures shared control and local accountability." Professor Leclerc's stern features softened. That addresses my concerns. I look forward to seeing our students thrive. He offered a nod and departed. I rejoined Thomas, who was on a video call with the Home Office. Storm's worst, she whispered. Gala will be hybrid. I smiled. Perfect. Let's finalize the agreement. Returning to the conference room, I took my seat as Dr. Dubois advanced to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice resonant, we are ready to sign the Langdon Dubois Global Scholars MOU. Shall we proceed? The table rose in unison, pens poised over crisp, printed documents. I met Thomas's gaze. Her eyes shone with shared purpose. As I signed the first copy, a flurry of snowflakes brushed against the window, and the ink seemed to blur. In that moment, I felt the full weight of our journey, from forged wills to global partnerships. But as the pen lifted, a soft chime echoed across the room. My phone. A text from an unknown number. They know. Watch your back. My blood ran cold. I looked up to see curious glances from the assembled delegation. And so, standing in the grand hall of diplomatic decorum, I realized our next battle was already knocking. And this time, it threatened not just our foundation, but our personal safety and the very trust upon which we'd built everything. I slipped my phone into my pocket, heart racing as the text blinked on the screen. They know. Watch your back. The voices around the conference table fell away as my pulse thundered. Who would send this? A partner? An enemy? And what did they know? The press of pens halted. Dr. Margot Dubois looked at me quizzically. Ms. Brandt? I forced a breath, composing myself. Nothing. Just confirming the signing copies. We're ready to proceed. I lifted the final document and pressed my signature. The ceremony concluded amid applause, but I couldn't focus on the accolades. The corridors of the Geneva Foundation buzzed with congratulations as Thomas and I departed the hall. She offered an arm, but I waved it off. I need to step outside. Under a stone archway, the icy air slapped my cheeks awake. I dialed Malcolm. Each ring felt like an eternity. Rosalind, everything all right? I got a message, I said, voice low. Somebody's aware of our global initiative details. He exhaled. I'll have Elena and the IT team trace the number and metadata. Stay vigilant. I ended the call and snapped the phone shut. Thomas approached. Concern etched across her face. What is it? She asked. I showed her the text. Her eyes narrowed. This means someone at the meeting, or someone feeding them, has an interest in derailing us. I swallowed. We need to secure our communications and identify the leak. Her jaw set. Let's go to the hotel. Back in our suite, the city lights glittered. I paced as Thomas arranged the suite's chairs into a makeshift command center. We'll cross-reference invitees, meeting attendees, and those with access to our documents. We'll identify who could have intercepted our details. I pulled up the Geneva delegation's roster on my laptop. Here, everyone signed an NDA. But one delegation member, Adrien Marchand from the European Cultural Trust, slipped during the QA. He asked very pointed questions about our governance structure. Thomas typed furiously. He had access to our MOU draft and timeline. Let's check if his device pinged on our secure network. Elena's message popped up. Number traced to a burner SIM registered at Hotel Bellevue. Should we notify local authorities? Quote. Malcolm's name flashed next. Proceed with caution. He's a high-profile figure. Solidarity with local police could backfire diplomatically. I stared at the screen. This went beyond corporate espionage. It veered into personal threat territory. We gather evidence discreetly. Thomas, can you liaise with Dr. Fisher for legal counsel? We need protective measures. She nodded, typing a new email. On it. I exhaled, pacing again. My phone buzzed. A new text. Stop now, or you'll regret it. Fury and fear clashed inside me. They were serious. Thomas placed a hand on my arm. We'll get through this. Together. I nodded, leaning into her reassurance. We have to close this out before Part 20. Over the next day, we executed a discreet investigation. Elena coordinated with Geneva's cybersecurity team to trace the burner SIM's network logs, revealing the physical location at Hotel Bellevue's conference center during our signing. Surveillance footage confirmed Adrien Marchand's presence near a service elevator at that time. We confronted Dr. Dubois in her office with the findings. She paled, surprised. Adrian? I had no idea. He's been lobbying for a rival program, more EU-centric scholarships. If he exposed our plans prematurely, he could steal our thunder. My jaw tightened. Then he needs to be stopped. We'll file a formal complaint, demand his removal, and secure our documents. Within hours, the European Cultural Trust suspended Marchand, pending an internal inquiry. Dr. Fisher confirmed our legal position was solid. That evening, in a private ceremony, we reaffirmed our partnership with Geneva, signing a second MOU addendum safeguarding confidentiality and establishing a joint security protocol for all future communications. As I signed, I felt a sense of quiet victory. We had turned back another assault on our legacy. Returning to the hotel suite, Thomas poured 2 glasses of wine. We clinked our glasses. To perseverance, she said. Dawn broke over the Alps as I stood at the balcony of my Geneva hotel suite, watching the light dance upon snow-capped peaks. Memories of my grandmother's study, the mahogany desk, the ivory envelopes, felt both a lifetime ago and profoundly present. Today, we would complete her story. Thomas joined me, clad in a tailored coat, eyes bright with anticipation. Are you ready for the final step? She asked. I inhaled the crisp air, more ready than ever. Let's give Grandma the legacy she deserves. Quote, we descended the grand staircase to the conference hall, where delegates from Geneva, Bristol, and our home office gathered. The Langdon Dubois Global Scholars Program's first cohort awaited, their faces a tapestry of cultures and hopes. At the front, 4 chairs were arranged for keynote speakers, Thomas and me, alongside Dr. Margot Dubois and Professor Laurent Leclerc. On the screen behind us flickered the Foundation's crest, flanked by images of past triumphs, courtroom battles, community workshops, scholarship celebrations, and global partnerships. I took my place at the podium, heart swelling. Welcome everyone to the inaugural Langdon Dubois Global Scholars Graduation Ceremony. Today we celebrate not just academic achievement, but the power of truth, resilience, and compassion to transcend boundaries. Applause filled the hall. I continued, recounting the journey, the forged will, the courtroom showdown, the Foundation's rebirth, the international expansion, and the crises we overcame, from internal sabotage to diplomatic espionage. Each chapter had tested us, but through unity and faith in Grandma's vision, we prevailed. These scholars represent the culmination of a legacy set in motion decades ago. They stand here as living proofs that when we honor truth and extend compassion, we build bridges across continents and generations. I gestured to the graduates, bright gowns shimmering under spotlights. I invite you all to rise and join me in congratulating these exceptional individuals. The audience rose, applause thunderous. Next, Thomas stepped forward, her voice ringing. This program is a testament to what sisters can achieve when they stand together, even after betrayal. It's a story of redemption, growth, and shared purpose. She paused, eyes shining. And now, 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Laughter rippled through the crowd, mingled with warm applause. The final message echoed Grandma's flair for community, inviting every voice to stay engaged in the ongoing narrative. As the ceremony closed with a crescendo of music and celebration, I felt the full circle of our journey. From the moment I tore open that ivory envelope to the signing of international accords and the defense of Grandma's will, every step had led here, an enduring legacy of resilience, compassion, and truth. Later, Thomas and I walked beneath the starry Swiss sky, hands linked. We did it, she whispered. I nodded, tears shimmering. Grandma would be proud. And as we gazed upon the city lights, I knew this was not an end, but a beginning of new stories yet to be told, new challenges to meet, and new hearts to inspire. 2 more great stories were indeed next. The world was ready. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.